Ladies and gentlemen, seekers of light and secret knowledge wherever you may be, you are listening to Points of Light Radio, the podcast dedicated to taking you past the apron and behind the closed doors of lodges everywhere. And here is your host, Stan Miller.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. Shalom. Assalamu alaikum. Adnastana. Welcome back to Points of Light Radio. As you heard in the introduction, the podcast designed to take you behind the apron and past the closed doors of lodges, conclaves everywhere. I'm looking forward to today's segment once again because we're going to be delving into a topic that oftentimes doesn't get discussed, but should be discussed more, particularly at the lodge level. And that is the importance of mentorship in our lodges and fraternal organizations. Now, I'll begin by saying that when I first joined the Orange Lodge back in 2005, I had two brothers that mentored me. Okay? It was my first taste of fraternalism. And I will also say that no one asked these two brethren to do it, right? They probably weren't even conscious of their actions at the time. But they were always there to offer guidance and answer my questions. And I had a lot of them, trust me. I'd never been involved in fraternalism before, right? And one of them was actually my guide when I got my purple degree, right? And I will say this, I made sure that I thanked them for their mentorship during a meeting that we held, right during a meeting. I wanted to make sure that everybody knew and could recognize what they had done, right? But how do we go about providing good mentorship to new members today, right? Well, I'll be fellowshipping with a number of guests who will be discussing, right, fraternal mentorship a little further. And this is going to be, like I said, this is going to be enjoyable. I really do. I'm going to be bringing in some former guests here, and you're going to see a new one here as well. I want you to see this, and I want you to tell me what you think. But before we go, as I always ask you, are you still thirsty for knowledge? Are you still searching for the light? Then you just trim your lamp and follow me. My first guest is a gentleman from Iceland, of all places. First one I've ever featured from Iceland. His name is Sigurður Egilsson, and he is from Temple Ritter Orden. Now, do you find there's good mentorship in the lodge? Do you find there's people that have been there to, shall we say, mentor you and bring you along?
Yeah, absolutely. And also they are very good at complimenting you when you're doing things. They let you know when you're doing things very well, and they let you know also if something might be better, but it's always in brotherly love. And
they make you feel part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really do guys like that. And I've had that happen to me in fraternalism as well, where there's been the person that says, okay, this is what we're going to do now. And they really explain things. They help break things down in ways that you couldn't really see in a lodge meeting. That's always wonderful. These next two gentlemen need no introduction. Phil Bacinas and Steve Dunkelberger. You saw them on here talking about the Knights of the dramatic order, the Knights of the Khorasan. You've also seen Steve on here numerous times as contributing to on various different topics. And so let's go see what they have to say about mentoring. First of all, the first thing I want to talk about is mentorship. So when you started out you don't have to mention names, but did somebody mentor you, and what form did the mentorship take within fraternalism?
Well, let's see. I guess it depends on which lodge, but yeah. Essentially, there's always somebody. Generally, the friend that brings you in, whether it's your sponsor or the person who signs your application that says that you're not a horrible human being. Generally, takes you through the meeting. This is how meetings work, and then you do your initiation, you do that, and you have all those informal questions that you get from along the way. There's always that sort of informal buddy. Some lodges have, your sponsor, and then this is the person, the new member coordinator that shepherds them through that process. Some of it is more formal than others. Some of them have the formal process, and they don't really do that, but they're still there.
Yeah,
I've never.
Go ahead, Phil.
Well, I've never had anybody been assigned to mentor me, but
No.
there's generally senior members that kind of show you the ropes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but nothing that's been structured.
I found because I applied for most of the. I think the difference is between, like, from what Steve's saying, I applied to be members of the fraternal orders that I'm a part of. So I wasn't necessarily invited in, but I did find that there was always somebody like in within them that would usually step up. They wouldn't even be told; they just kind of step up and be that mentor, that person that was there to answer questions or slow you down if you were trying to hurry through your degrees too much and things like that.
Yeah.
It often either goes to the vice, whatever you want to call it, the vice chancellor commander or the vice president or whatever, or the past, someone who's gone through that. In like the Eagles Lodge, it's the past junior or junior pass worthy.
Yeah. But what effect did that have on you then when these people did it help out? Were you able? Did it have the effect of maybe helping you pay it forward when someone else joins, things like that?
I've seen it work positively, and I've seen it work negatively.
Oh, okay.
Where it's worked positively, people have mentored you, but they haven't been in your face and pushed you before you were ready.
Okay.
They've kind of been there when you're ready to take the next step. But I've also seen, and this has never happened to me, but I've seen people that are overzealous and will suffocate a brand new member.
Whoa, yeah.
And drive the member out. Usually it's somebody that's got a dominant personality. And I've seen it in every lodge that I've ever been a member of, where they'll suffocate a new member. So there's but I've also seen people do a very gracious and good job mentoring new members where they're helping them at each step of the way, but they're waiting for them to get adjusted to the organization and not suffocating them from day one.
Yeah.
But what do you think that lodges could do to maybe help promote or improve mentorship? Do you think it's something that maybe they have to like institutionalize and say, I'm going to assign you this person or whatever? Do you think that's really the way to go forward?
Well, I think that most lodges have that sort of function in their books, whether it's in practice or not, like anything else. But it is nice to have that designated new member orientation that technically is not that person's friend or sponsor. Just because you have one more person that they can go and talk to. Not to say that person wouldn't answer the questions, but it's just a matter of one more contact, and that leads to more friendships and more friendships and more friendships that way. So it's so someone 10 years a member said, "Oh yeah, I brought them into the lodge." It's like, well, it's we can go past that now.
Yeah, that's true.
So you're not a sponsor isn't necessarily beholden to them forever; that they are members in their own right.
Yeah, that's true.
But like Phil said, that it can be overbearing. Not that person is intentionally doing something wrong, but doesn't necessarily fit that person's personality or what they want out of the lodge, and let them go on their own pace versus forcing them to, go through anything. I mean, I guess churches do that same thing with coffee hour. If you're a new person at church, you're going to get, shake hands with 5 different people on your same, 90-second elevator speech.
Right.
And that sort of thing. And that can be off-putting for a lot of people.
Or you're going to be ignored. You're either going to get suffocated or you're going to be ignored. And there's somewhere in there, there's a middle ground where you want to be there. You want to talk to the person. There's a concept of ownership. Before a new member can go to the next step, they need to feel ownership in the organization, and you feel that organization by, or you feel that ownership by doing social activities with different members, I think. But if you go in too hard before a person feels a sense of ownership, they're just going to walk.
Yeah.
And I guess to clarify that it's not necessarily outwardly ignoring them, but they've got their own membership, their own things to do as well, and they sort of let the new person set the pace, and sometimes that new person is waiting for the established members to set that pace, and so it's that impromptu social dance that goes through. It's like, okay, you're ready to race through, or you want to just kind of sit back for a while and figure out where you fit, or do you want me to start assigning you things? That sort of thing. It's not an outward ignoring or snubbing necessarily. It's just that natural feeling out of a new person in the organization.
This next gentleman you're going to see is Nathaniel Clayton. He's in a number of different fraternal organizations, but this is an excerpt from an interview I did with him discussing Vermilion Masonic Lodge number 24. And he talks about his mentorship within that lodge. I love what he has to say here. But tell me about the importance of mentorship in your lodge. Have you ever had someone mentor you when you came into one of these fraternal bodies? And what form did that take?
I have. There's a really great gentleman in Vermilion Lodge, and he introduced me to traveling to different lodges. So that was not really something I was fully aware of beforehand, but that's something that can be done, because they say you have a global worldwide brotherhood. Yeah. And I found this is actually true. So this gentleman, he actually invited me to come with him. And he's an older gentleman. He's like, I would love for you to just come with me. We can talk in the car, and we would talk about the different appendant bodies. We would talk about the different lodges. We would talk about the differences between, let's say, Saskatchewan, Alberta, the differences within Alberta, differences within, there's differences within the ritual, and it's more of a regional difference. So it's the same, but there's differences.
Now, your lodge, what is it? Is it a York Rite or is it Canadian Rite or what?
A Canadian Rite.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was very interesting going to the first lodge I went to outside my own lodge was the York Rite Lodge. Oh. And I was like, what is going on? So, yeah, I recommend it. If you're a Mason, I recommend traveling and learning all you can learn. That's been a great experience with me, and having that mentorship, having a brother that I can go with and spend time with. And he's actually introduced me to a lot of other brothers, and it's definitely, I'm not saying it's like a networking thing. This is a thing where you actually make relationships that are strong in your life, and that these people want you to be a better you, and you can build each other's iron sharpens iron.
My last guest is Deborah Laverne. You've seen her here on the March 23rd segment of Points of Light Radio discussing the Rebeccas. And as we discovered in that particular segment, she's been in Odd Fellowship and the Rebecca Assembly for over half a century. So who better to talk about mentorship than Deborah Laverne? Mentorship. When you started out in Odd Fellowship and the Rebeccas, Did you have a mentor? And if so, what form did this mentorship take?
I had a grandmother who pulled me into the order,
Okay.
but she wasn't a member of the lodge I could attend.
Oh,
So in effect, I didn't actually get active until my parents moved back to California. And so I joined the lodge they were going to. And effectively, my mother and I encouraged each other in the Rebecca degree.
that's really special, actually. Now, like, what do you think that we could do to promote, and to improve mentorship within fraternalism? I know you're a member of the Rebeccas, so, what do you think you could do to promote and improve mentorship within the Rebeccas?
Well, in any lodge, mentorship involves both encouraging a new member to become active and transmit the values of the lodge to that new generation. Because if you've got, there have been lodges that have gotten themselves into trouble because they had a whole bunch of new members come in. They had enough members that the new members were encouraging each other, but they didn't have the knowledge of what the history was. They didn't have as much understanding of the purposes of the lodge as they needed. And sometimes they went off in strange directions. There have been lodges that got taken over by a group, and they decided, oh, we can sell the building and use the money for other purposes. And they had to get told very sharply, no, you can't sell the building.
But, I do know that when I first came into fraternalism, some of the lodges I belonged to, they were down in numbers. And one of the things that had happened, I found out after I was in was, back in the 70s, shall we say, when newer members were coming in and some of the older members were getting impatient because these young fellas did not know the rituals, did not know the degree system the way they should. And they would get very impatient with these gentlemen, these young gentlemen during the meetings, not knowing their degree or their ritual work and how to repeat lectures and so on. And
that's how to
me that
drive
the
new members
mentorship was
away.
terrible. You can't just leave a person off on their own like that.
Oh, and that's how you drive away new members.
Exactly. That's exactly what had happened. Yeah.
So
go ahead.
So mentorship needs to be recognized as a necessary step. But the mentor needs to be aware of what needs to be taught. And the other members who aren't the mentors need to stay out of the way.
We covered a lot of ground there, didn't we? So let's discuss what we've learned. First of all, Mr. Igleson from Templar Ritter Orden. Okay, that's not the last you'll ever see of him, by the way. That's part of a much larger interview I did with him. But it sounds like the gentlemen from his lodge are really encouraging him on, complimenting him, right? And that's wonderful. And he's brand new. He'd never been in fraternalism before, I might add. Another one of those fresh canvases, and he's learning so much, right? And sounds like they have great mentorship in his particular lodge. Nathaniel Clayton. Now, I love what happened to him. One of the older members, more established members from his lodge there in Vermilion, Alberta, had taken him on a road trip. He took him to different lodges, okay? Right, so he really got to see what he was a part of. But, during the course of this road trip, he talked to him about dependent bodies. Now, if you remember, on my November 13th, 2023 segment of Points of Light Radio, I discussed the need to promote and make our members aware of these appendant bodies so that they could move up, right? Well, guess what? this gentleman, his brother there in the lodge had made him aware of those, right? And he'd also introduced them around. You really feel like you're part of something special at a time like that. And you really become aware of how special it is when you're visiting other lodges like that, of course. Phil Bacinas and Steve Dunkelberg talked about how we don't want to suffocate a new member. We want the mentorship to be there, but not to suffocate that person with all this extra attention, right? And I think that is important, that mentorship, there's a way to do it so that someone learns. Deborah Laverne says that, the members, the mentors need to be allowed to work and kind of let everyone else kind of get out of the way and let that happen. And I do agree with that, right? There's a way to do mentorship, right? But I think everybody seems to agree that it's not something we need to institutionalize, shall we say, within our lodges. You're going to be assigned to this person, stuff like that. We don't necessarily need to do that. We don't need to make a rule out of it. But, mentorship does have to happen. So what are your thoughts, brothers and sisters? Right? Let me ask you, who mentored you when you first came into fraternalism? Right? Are you reciprocating and paying that mentorship forward? I would hope you did, right? I know I try to. I honestly do, right? Right? But does your lodge offer good mentorship? And if it doesn't, perhaps it's time for you to step up, right? Like, I believe personally in this day and age that it's important to not only bring in new members, but offer them the type of mentorship and guidance that they need to move forward, right? You saw a lot of great examples of mentorship here during the course of this particular segment, haven't you? Right? And like I said, if you have been mentored, pay it forward, right? I'm going to leave it there. I hope you've enjoyed this. I know I love doing these little segments like this one. I really do, where we kind of be able to, take these topics from every angle like you saw here, right? But before I go, I want to remind you that this podcast is available on both YouTube and Spreaker. Please share, like, and subscribe when viewing Points of Light Radio on YouTube. I also welcome your comments and input. Mr. Igleson actually reached out to me, and I over the YouTube channel, and that's how I got in touch with him, right? You can follow Points of Light Radio on my Facebook page at facebook.com/Points of Light Radio. My Twitter handle is at PO Light Radio. You can see the link to my Spotify channel, as well as my Points of Light Radio store in the details section. Brothers and sisters, it's been a pleasure fellowshipping with you today. Until we meet again, just step and walk in that light. Remember to mentor.